In 2018, a Connecticut woman named Diane Weatherspoon called a medical alert company on behalf of her mother. Her mother was 85, deaf, blind, recovering from a broken hip. According to local news reports, the company told her the only way to cancel her mother's contract was if her mother died or moved permanently into a nursing home. Weatherspoon didn't accept that answer. She took it to a local news consumer protection desk. The company's response on record was that there was in fact another option. A doctor's letter confirming 24-hour in-home care would also work. It just hadn't been mentioned to her. That single detail is worth sitting with, not the 3-year contract itself. The fact that even one of its 3 narrow exits had to be pried out of the company by a reporter after a family with a deaf, blind 85-year-old mother had already been told no. The common assumption about a medical alert system is that it's simple. You press a button, help comes, and if you ever don't need it anymore, you cancel, the same way you'd cancel almost any other subscription. It's marketed and mostly understood as protection with no downside. A small monthly cost for a large peace of mind, easy to start, presumably just as easy to stop once it's no longer needed. For Life Alert specifically, that assumption doesn't hold, and the gap between the assumption and the reality is the whole story. If you like discovering the hidden financial stories behind everyday things, there's a lot more coming. Subscribe, and we'll keep digging. Every Life Alert subscriber signs a 36-month agreement. According to the company's own contract language, reviewed by multiple outlets that cover the medical alert industry, there are only 3 conditions under which that agreement can be canceled. The subscriber dies, the subscriber moves permanently into a nursing or assisted living facility, or the subscriber begins receiving 24-hour in-home care from a medical professional. Each one requires documentation, a death certificate, facility paperwork, a signed letter from a doctor. Change your mind. Find the price too high. Decide a family member can check in instead. Discover your insurance already covers something similar. None of those are on the list. None of those get you out. Here's a detail that makes the contract's own terms even harder to sit with. Dying doesn't automatically settle the account either. The agreement states that upon a subscriber's death, the contract terminates, but according to the company's own contract text, a refund of the remaining monitoring fees only applies if the subscriber died alone at home, with a death certificate confirming it. The fullest resolution the contract offers is triggered by the exact outcome the product exists to prevent. Here's one way to make sense of that, without assuming anyone sat down and designed it to be cruel. Look at what the 3 approved exit conditions have in common. Each one describes a situation where the basic premise behind the product, a person living at risk, alone, without other coverage, has stopped being true. If the subscriber has died, there's no one left to protect. If they're in a facility or under 24-hour nursing care, someone else is already doing the job the device was sold to do. In every other circumstance, a health scare that turns out fine, a move to a safer living situation by choice, a family taking over check-ins, simply not being able to afford it anymore, the original premise on paper still technically holds. So under this reading, the contract still holds too. That's one plausible internal logic for how the terms were written. It isn't something the company has stated as its reasoning, and there's no way to confirm it from the outside. What can be confirmed is the effect. A contract structure that, for a lot of families, makes the difference between "we don't need this anymore" and "we're legally allowed to stop paying for this" come down to whether a doctor is willing to put something very specific in writing. Which raises a question worth asking directly. Is this just how medical alert contracts work? It isn't. According to consumer research site SafeWise, Life Alert is the only major medical alert company in the US that requires a long-term contract at all. The next names on any list of top providers: Medical Guardian, Bay Alarm Medical, Mobile Help, ADT's Medical Alert line, all advertise no long-term contract, month-to-month billing, and in some cases a price lock guarantee instead. Those aren't small, unknown challengers. They're the companies that show up next to Life Alert in nearly every comparison and review. And none of them require what Life Alert requires. There's a business logic that would explain why a company might prefer that structure, separate from anything to do with the customer's well-being. A 3-year non-cancelable agreement is a predictable revenue stream in a way a month-to-month one isn't. And predictable revenue is worth more to a company than the same dollars arriving in a form a customer could interrupt at any time. None of that requires anyone to have designed the policy with families in mind at all, in either direction. It only requires the same math that makes long contracts attractive in plenty of other industries: gyms, cell phone plans, some cable packages, applied to a product marketed heavily toward older adults living alone. None of this means Life Alert designed its cancellation policy specifically to trap families. No public statement from the company frames the policy that way, and treating 3 narrow, documentable exit conditions as proof of deliberate cruelty would overstate what's actually on the record. What is on the record is narrower and in its way harder to argue with. A contract structure whose terms happen to make an exit nearly impossible for anyone whose situation changes in any way other than the 3 it names, in a market where the other leading names sell the same kind of protection without asking for that trade-off. Which is what makes the marketing and the contract sit so uncomfortably next to each other. The sales pitch runs on fear, the fall, the empty house, the help that doesn't come in time. That fear is what gets a family to sign, often quickly, often for a parent who isn't in the room to negotiate the terms for themselves. And the same fear the pitch is built on is exactly what the family runs back into a year or 2 later when circumstances change and they discover the only accepted reasons to leave are the very outcomes they signed up specifically to avoid. If any of this sounds familiar, if you or someone you're caring for is stuck in a contract like this one, consumer protection attorneys and local area agencies on aging have dealt with exactly this situation before, and it's worth a call before assuming there's truly no way out. You thought this was a subscription like any other, something you could simply decide to stop. For a lot of families, it turns out to be closer to a bet that the version of the future the contract will actually let you walk away from is the version you were trying hardest not to think about when you signed it. The device is still just a button. It's the sentence describing how to stop paying for it that turns out to be the hardest part to read. And for many of the people signing this particular contract, that sentence isn't a small print detail. For some subscribers, it's the last contract they'll ever sign. There's more beneath every business than you see. This is the business beneath. Subscribe to uncover what's next.